Welcome to Triumph and Disaster, a show dedicated to manly creativity and culture. Brought to you by your host, Cameron McHarg.
Hey guys, it's Cameron McHarg, and this week, finally, I have someone that's not involved in the movie industry. I've never meant it to be like this. It just happens to be that most of the guys I know tend to be, somehow involved, actors or directors or whatever the case may be. But I've never intended this show to be just about that. And so finally, I have Wordsmith, who is a major street artist based here in LA. Man, I really, really, really enjoy this conversation. I'm really, I'm proud to put this one out there. He's a great guy and a real artist, a writer and a street artist and a good guy. And I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I do. Here's Triumph and Disaster. All right. I'm here with Wordsmith in his living room. We literally met like 10 minutes ago. So we're just going to start from scratch. And we started out with, you introduced me with your name, obviously, which we're not going to mention. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about how that works?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I am the LA-based street artist known as Wordsmith. And as far as the name Wordsmith and retaining the anonymity, when I first started, it was something that I did because of the legality of things. I mean, technically what I do, painting on walls, is not, legal here in the city of Los Angeles, or any city for that matter. But as time went on, or as time goes on, great things are happening. People are liking the words that I'm tattooing on walls. And the city of LA, for example, hired me a couple months ago to put up motivational phrases along the route of the LA Marathon. So when stuff like that is happening, I care a little less about the legality. Again, I'm doing something that I think is trying to send, positive messages and inspirational messages in any city that I work in. And I also think, what I do beautifies, a city or like an electrical box if I'm putting a piece on that. I get why cities have rules, graffiti and vandalism is something. It is, a problem, or can be a problem. But I think I danced the line on that. And as I said, as time went on, I kind of cared less or worry less about the legality of it because of things like that happening. But the reason I still retain my anonymity, it's very simple. It's that the mystery works in my favor. I think there's something to, the audience that I have, any audience, just somebody, even they turn a corner and see, a piece of mine. It's kind of like, who did that? Who took the time and energy to put up, this on this wall or this utility box? So yeah, I think the mystery definitely works in my favor. Even though if you meet me at any juncture, if you meet me at a gallery show, or if I'm putting up a piece, I have no problem shaking anybody's hand and saying, "Hey, hi, hello, here's who I am." You know what I mean? And tell you like I just told you when you met, to say, the name that my friends call me.
What you just said was interesting. We're going to bounce around all over the place, by the way. We're not going to start from where you're born and go until now or something.
I'm nimble, so I can move.
It's ironic. On the way over here, I actually saw one of your things on Sunset about a mile away, which was funny. But when you said about the anonymity, your stuff, I think for me, it's almost like, I think you're absolutely right with that. I think it's important, not just for you, just for people that see your stuff, because it almost, I think it speaks to everybody personally. Almost everything that you do is a message, and I'll be posting a bunch of your stuff. So if people aren't familiar with you, it's on the triumphanddisasterblog.com. So just so they see what you do, and we'll talk more about that later. But cool. The messages, I think, they've spoke to me. I've taken pictures of them, not even to send around, just because I thought it's just kind of what I needed to hear at that time, Mm-hmm. So when it's anonymous, it almost feels like it's meant for you in a weird way. You know what I mean? It's not like, do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do know what you're trying to say. And there's a couple things in there. First of all, the proximity. like I do live in Hollywood, so if you go down Sunset, there are a lot of pieces because I like to own my neighborhood, but it's also where I'm driving around and walking around the most, so I constantly see new walls or walls become available if they get painted over. So there is a lot of work in the proximity of Sunset between whatever we're talking La Brea and Crescent Heights, and two, the anonymity does work in the favor there. Where like when I started. I knew what I wanted to do. It wasn't as calculated as I knew I was going to be here where I am, now. But when I started, I just kind of felt that I knew I was going to do word-based because I'm a writer, and I just thought being positive was needed. You know what I mean? And first, it was in Los Angeles. You know what I mean? There's a lot of negativity, and there's a lot of it's a roller coaster ride, so there's a lot of there's a lot of
despair here.
I was say it's just so I kind of thought that the reason when I started, the first inkling was I'm going to say things to people here in Los Angeles that I wish they would have said to me when I first arrived, because we all arrive here with an agenda or a plan or dreams, and that roller coaster ride is tough. You know what I mean? LA's been very good to me, but no matter how good it is, you still have those ups and downs. So I really wanted to kind of approach that and just kind of like talk to people and kind of say things that I knew anybody needs to hear. And that's the beauty of it. It started off with Los Angeles, and I use a phrase called doing time in Hollywood. And those were the things I wanted to say to the people doing time in Hollywood. But I quickly realized that it's not just Los Angeles, and it's not just doing time in Hollywood, it's doing time anywhere. Yeah. Everybody has dreams or needs positivity all across the country and all across the world. So it really kind of turned into something that just wasn't LA-based. And those positive messages I saw really early on were resonating with people, even though they kind of were written for Hollywood, or the early ones were written for Hollywood, or just people, chasing the dream. It really is a universal thing. And yeah, the anonymity works in the favor because it does feel like it's just, the universe speaking to you. Exactly. or turning a corner and it's a sign, you know what I mean? That's exactly, and I hear that all the time. That's exactly what I needed to hear today. And that's awesome. That fuels my creative fire because those words are resonating and people can kind of discover them at any juncture. Like my success, and I'm a very modest person, but my success and my following has now translated into me being read on a daily basis, like all over the world, which is, for a writer, that's living the dream. But at the heart of it is still that grassroots attitude. And no matter what happens, I'll always do those pieces in the streets. Like I just went to Chicago, and I was brought over to Chicago to do amazing work for a couple companies. Like one was just in this building that was just very creative and inspiring, and they brought me over to do these very large, grand, awesome pieces. And then I worked for a couple other companies, and that was great because I know those pieces will stay. You know what I mean? They're in their stores or in their locations, and they're going to stay. So that presence is indelible, and that was huge for me. But guess what? When I was done with those things, I turned around and hit the streets and put up pieces for what I call for the people. Like it's putting art on the street is art for the people, because I always will do that, because I love the idea of some random person that doesn't even know who I am turning a corner and discovering me. You know what I mean? Whether it's just the words and it puts a smile on their face or changes their days, or they look at the name and research me and maybe fall down the rabbit hole that is now, my online presence or my social media presence. And that's awesome. You know what I mean? So to any degree, just affecting people in that manner is pretty damn amazing.
It really is the ultimate, isn't it?
It really is,
for an artist of any kind, I would think.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is I started this for me. There's a story there, but I started it for me, and I always say if I had 500 followers, I'd still be doing it. You know what I mean? I maybe wouldn't be doing it as much or as grand, or we maybe wouldn't be here talking, but I'd still be doing it because I'm having so much fun. And I think that shows in the work, but that also is... it goes both ways. Like the fact that the words are resonating, the fact that I get messages from people all the time, and I know that it's changing things or people's days, weeks, months, or lives, if I can say that. Again, I'm very modest. It motivates me. It adds so much fuel to that creative fire. But again, at the heart of it is I started it for me, and the fact that, and that became a word. It's like, do it for yourself and hope that what you do resonates with others. And I think that is the secret to success or happiness in what you do. Because, like, let's say as a writer, it's like if you're writing something, like if you say, I'm going to write a zombie flick because zombie flicks are popular. Or if you're a singer and you're like, oh, I'm going to sound like blah, blah, blah because he or she is popular, you're doing it wrong. You literally need to carve your own niche and do it for yourself and believe in what you're doing, whether it's words or music or painting, whatever it is, and do it for yourself. Make yourself happy. Write the things you want, sing the things you want, and hope that it resonates with other people. And if it does, that's awesome. But even along the way, I think it helps the roller coaster ride, because if you're doing it thinking, oh, I'm going to sell this, you might resent it, you know what I mean? Or it just might not be as fulfilling as doing whatever for to make yourself happy.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think, and I've talked about this before a couple times briefly about how I think, like, if you your audience may not be as large, maybe. I mean, but if you're doing something that's for you, that's definitely with integrity, you're going, no matter what it is. I mean, even if it's super experimental or whatever, or really off the wall, you're gonna have an audience. You're gonna have it'll be an intense audience. It might not be a large audience, but it'll find you and you'll have one. I really believe that. And your stuff is like, even what you were just talking about right now about avoiding trying to sound like someone else if you're a musician or whatever, be like someone else. You have such a complete lack of cynicism in your work, which is, I mean, when people think of street artists, most people in the mainstream world, if they know of it at all, they probably would think of Banksy. I'm assuming he's the biggest.
Absolutely.
And I love him, like
so
most
do
people
I.
do. But there's a lot of, there's anger in there, and it's good. It's justified. And I think he's making a big difference in opening people's eyes that way in ways that you couldn't by just, speaking or any other way. The symbolism that he has is very powerful. But, there's anger and there's cynicism there. And I don't really see much of that in your work. I see a little bit of critique sometimes. Like I wrote one thing down. I don't really usually write notes down, but just one of them that I saw was Smile. It's a status update. So
it's an old school status update. Yeah.
So an old school. Yeah. So that's a little bit of a critique on this whole culture of social media and likes and being like other people and sort of conformity. That's about as close as I've seen, and even then, it's still a positive message.
Yeah, and I'm a very positive person. You know what I mean? So even if I do, dance upon that line of critiquing, I try to do it in something that makes people think or smile or whatnot. Like one of the earliest ones I did, it was the first one I ever did, there's nothing sadder in the world than a pawn shop in Hollywood, which sounds very cynical, you know what I mean? But it's not. It's just a creative way of saying, don't give up on your dreams.
That sounds like a one-line poem, actually.
Yeah, thank you. It was spawned from, I'm a published author, and I wrote this book. I broke the one rule as a writer in Hollywood. You're not supposed to write about Hollywood, but I did write a book, and it was set in Hollywood, and there were a lot of views and opinions, and it got published, and it got great reviews, and won some awards. It didn't sell a lot of copies.
Well, what is it?
See, that's what I won't.
You won't do it.
People think I'm crazy, which now I'm going to frustrate your audience. But what I was getting at is there was a lot of my opinions embedded in the book, and that helped me launch Wordsmith. Like a lot of those things, like that line, just going back to that, this is why I brought it up. And I probably shouldn't, but the reason I brought it up is that line, there's nothing sadder than a pawn shop in Hollywood, is from the book. You know what I mean? And
it sounds like something from a Tom Waits song or something to me.
Thanks. You know what I mean? But and it's weird. like I also used to work in advertising, and I was in Chicago working in advertising as a copywriter, but I just wasn't doing the type of writing that I wanted to. And advertising, as great as it is tough. You know, it burned me out. You know what I mean?
It does that to a lot of people. Doesn't it?
Yeah, it has that nature. So I am that cliche. I quit my job and moved west, and told my family and friends I was going to go write, and they all thought I was crazy. But LA's been good to me. But what I'm getting at, as far as the copywriter and being a writer, and it's wordsmith is such a merger of worlds where I did learn, you know what I mean, through advertising how to, hone down a thought or polish a thought, and less is more is a huge mantra of mine, and that is wordsmith. It's like literally, it's just boiling thoughts and phrases down to the most fewest words, but the most effective words. And I pride myself in that, and I hope I always do that, and I think it's also part of the reason why it's resonating or why it took off, because we are living in a day and age where communication is becoming less and less. We're texting and we're using emoticons to express, feelings and emotions, you know what I mean? And here's the amazing thing, like there is a right place, right time to wordsmith, in that is going on. But what I've noticed is the act of, let's say somebody turns a corner, sees one of my pieces and takes a picture and sends it to somebody, whether it's motivational or romantic, that gesture, or funny, that gesture in this day and age is amazing. It's going the extra mile, you know what I mean, of communicating with somebody, you know what I mean, and it is because we're so shorthanded, and we are so in the day and age of emoticons, but it's an amazing thing to be part of that people are using my work or my words to express themselves further. Like the funniest thing, this makes me laugh so hard. I hope it makes you laugh and the audience laugh, but an amazing thing happens. Like I'm a romantic guy, and I'll do like. I
was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
it's a lot of your stuff is very romantic. Actually,
it is, and we could talk about that.
But anyway,
further. But an amazing thing happens. Like I think of a romantic phrase, and I have muses in my life. I have these, women that, whatever, I'm trying to woo or whatnot. So I think of a phrase, and I work on it, and I polish it, and I print it up, when I think it's ready to go. And then I go out in the middle of the night or early in the morning, and I spray paint a wall. I risk, all this as far as, getting caught, and spray paint the typewriter and wheat paste the page. And then I come back later and take an awesome picture, and then I upload it onto my Instagram. And when I do that, literally romantic pieces, my comment section turns into like a get a room scenario, because there's constantly people sending it to whoever they're trying to woo or whoever they're in love with, and it goes this back and forth that makes me laugh. But something keeps happening of, like let's say it's a guy sends it to a girl, the girl will come back and be like, you are the most romantic man I know, to @Bobby whatever that sent her the thing. And I'm like, wait a minute, I wrote the thing. I risked everything. I printed it up. I took the picture. I uploaded. But that guy who said @Susie Q, he's the most romantic man. So it makes me laugh every single time. But it's, again, that gesture of him tagging her in that, in this day and age, has just become like going the extra mile, and it's awesome to be a catch-all in that, or caught in that phenomenon. But it makes me laugh every single time.
Yeah,
and it happens more often than you think.
I'm sure it does.
It's funny.
I'm sure it does. I mean, I've done that. I mean, not the tag, but I've taken pictures and sent your stuff to people before. I mean, I've done it myself.
Thank you.
You keep bringing up the fact that you're a writer, and that's what you are. That's primarily what you are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's the crazy thing. I'm a writer. Like I said, I used to work in advertising. I came here and started writing scripts, both TV and movies. I've worked in documentary TV. I'm a published author. I'm trying to find time for my second book, but that's what's crazy. Like I got this crazy notion to start doing street art, and it came from the need that I knew I needed an active hobby. I needed something that got me away from the computer for stretches of time. So again, I started doing it for myself, and it was a crazy notion that I'm like, I think I'm going to try to do street art. If I do street art, I'm a writer, so I'll do word-based street art. If I do word-based, I think there's an image of a typewriter. And then, it was a page coming out of it, and I just got excited about that idea, and I just made it happen. I just started doing it again for myself. But why it works for me is because I am a writer. I'm a writer that loves to work in a lot of different mediums. I don't believe in writer's block. I believe in project block. So if I'm blocked on a script or a book that I'm working on, I just shift to something else and keep writing. But wordsmith is just that. It's writing in a kick-ass medium, and it's fun as hell. So it has become a full-time job. Like, this is what I do now. And like I said, I'm trying to find time, that balance, so I can work, get my second book, get a first draft of my second book out. But it's a very good problem to have. Like, the last year or 2 years, I haven't had time because wordsmith keeps me busy, and amazing things are happening with it. But that's great. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm getting read on a daily basis, and I'm writing in this kick-ass medium, so it just works for me. And
it all feeds back, right?
It is so surprising. Like, I started this, I never expected the following that I have. I never expected to make a dime, you know what I mean? But again, when you do stumble upon those things that you're passionate about and having so much fun, and they're resonating with other people to the degree that becomes full-time or does support me, it's just, it doesn't get better than that. It really doesn't. I do other things. This is not, doing this podcast is not what I primarily do. I fucking love it though. And I get to meet the greatest people, and it's fascinating to me. And I believe in what it's about. I believe in, this is all about, it's about, guys and creativity and, with it. And so I love it, but it does with me too, kind of help, draw relationships and people to me that feed, what I do. Even it's just that this is a format that we can reach more people. And if you can do that and get your message out to more people, and it feeds what you really do, and fuck yeah, you win in every way. Absolutely. And there's something in there that, like, now that it's I know it's resonating and it has taken off to the degree that it has. Now my goal is just to get the words to as many places and to as many people as possible. And that's not a greedy thing. Like, I'm not like I need to rule the world, but I know that the words are resonating. I know it's making a difference. I know it's changing, people's, days, weeks, months, and I said lives, because I've gotten messages that people have just, outpoured with emotion, of what something that I did, did for them, and how it changed, their course in their lives. And that's amazing to hear. So it just makes me want to visit more cities and do bigger pieces, and just have more opportunity for that small, whatever it is, that small butterfly effect. I called it almost grassroots, of somebody turns a corner, and if it puts a smile on their face, whether that corner is, on Sunset, near me, or in Melbourne, Australia, it's just thrilling. It's just absolutely thrilling.
I want to ask you about that in a minute, about where you've done everything, because if that's an example.
It's becoming a long list, but that makes me, it's kind of amazing, but yeah, we could talk about it.
Before, because there's just so many cool things that you're talking about there, and I was just thinking how I think that you are unique, and maybe there's others. If there are, I don't know of them, but maybe I'm sure they may exist. But what you do is technically street art, but it is writing. It is like one or two lines, maybe just a few lines, but it's writing, but it's street art. So in case, again, people aren't familiar with your stuff, I think at least 90% of it is essentially like an old Remington, like an old school typewriter.
Yes.
With paper coming out of it, with a few of these, like, poems, basically, or words, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, I call them words, but I've heard them called poems, phrases, just indelible thoughts and phrases, you know what I mean? But I call them words, WRD, because wordsmith has no vowels in it, so I just call them WRD as words, and that's what I call my pieces. But yeah, it's always traditionally a painted typewriter, and that's done via a stencil. And I designed that stencil. Like I took probably 5 or 6 old-fashioned typewriters that I liked and took elements of them and broke it down into what is essentially a single layer stencil. I've played with multiple layer stencils, but for the street, there's nothing easier than just, going up there and doing a single layer stencil. And now that I thought I would do more experimenting with that, like layers and just different styles, but essentially since I designed it, the typewriter has stayed the same. It's actually evolved over time, and things have actually, it's a kind of a less is more thing. I'm finding I took away some elements and just made it less busy, but people are now telling me that image is iconic, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't want to move away from it too far, because people are saying that when they see it, they just want to get closer and see what the words say. But yes, then it's also the second half of it is usually a wheat pasted page coming out of the typewriter. So It's a very simple idea, and that's what I got excited about. It's a painted typewriter with literally a paper page coming out of it, and that paper page is a canvas. It allowed me to write whatever I wanted, and I write a lot. I'm very prolific, you know what I mean? So that really does... the body of work grew really quickly, and it continues to grow, you know what I mean? Because even though I have greatest hits, I have these words that are very popular that I take to cities because it's literally bringing them to new places. I am always writing new things and getting new thoughts out there, and that might be here in Los Angeles or in a new place that I go. And what I was going to say, the reason I say most of the time it's paint plus paper is when I do something very large. Like I just did my largest piece in Chicago, and it was 25 feet high. I did that all paint, and that's obviously because I'm putting it on the side of the building and I want it to last, so I paint a page and then I have stencils for the words, and that's cool too. But the essence of the idea, again, paper coming out of a typewriter is really what I want to try to do most of the time. I like staying true to that idea.
And obviously this thing in Chicago was you were hired for it. It was
Mm-hmm.
but you still kind of do things kind of on the fly that aren't technically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Chicago, I mentioned it. I talked a lot, but I mentioned it briefly earlier. I was brought to do work at a place called Lacuna, and I did probably like 10 pieces, all sizes, 25 feet, 17 feet, 15 feet, and did some 6-footers. And then I did some work for Lululemon, in their stores, and that was great. That's work that I know is going to stay. It's going to be indelible.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a presence in Chicago, long after I leave. But then I did turn around and I hit the streets at night and put up, pieces on construction walls or just these great walls that are, just all over the city. And I was working with some other artists. Like they took me around and showed me some spots, and that was great. That's always great in any city, you know what I mean, to kind of have what I call handlers that know where to go
that's
because it saves time, you know what I mean? And then you also have instant lookouts, you know what I mean? And it's great to do. I work with photographers a lot of the time, and it's great because then they document the work, and then I work with other artists because they know where to go, and when they're putting up work, I'm watching out for the cops. We actually call it pizza because if you see a cop, you don't want to yell cop,
right.
So we yell pizza if we see them. So I keep an eye out for the pizza while they keep an eye out for the pizza while I'm working.
Okay, so this is something that is fascinating. This is something that I'm sure most people, at least think of whenever they see street artists. How do they do this? Do they do this by themselves? Do they get arrested? How long does it take to do it? I mean, you started out, I'm assuming when you first were doing it, it was just kind of you lone wolfing it, just running around at night. And
yeah,
so
for the longest time,
it
was just me. And I was putting up very small pieces, and they didn't take me very long. Like I could do a piece in like 30 or 60 seconds. But as you go on, you know what I mean, and you want to do, first of all, nicer pieces. You want them to look better because, you know what I mean, especially when people are seeking them out. So that takes a little more time. When you do larger pieces, it takes more time. I worked alone for a long time, and I'm always very, very careful. I didn't like working at night, but I'm a morning person. I love getting up early. It's when I do my best writing. So I just started getting up a couple hours earlier. And at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, especially in Los Angeles, or really any city, there's not a lot going on. So you can hear and see surprises potentially coming around the corner. Mm-hmm. Having said that, you do anything at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and there's a spotlight on you. You know what I mean? Like
You
if there's
stand
a
out.
cop, if there's a lone cop going down the street and, you know, I'm hitting a wall, it's literally, they're going to see it. So it's a give and take. I like working in the mornings because it's so quiet, but I have found over time, and this came from people giving me walls. The first wall I was given was like on Hollywood Boulevard, and I was doing it, and I realized I was there. I was taking my time. It was a very large piece, but I was taking my time, and I think an hour went by, and I'm like, I never looked over my shoulder, but nobody ever stopped. And this was like at noon. So I also over time have realized if you just do stuff any time of the day and look like you're supposed to be there, you
No one
can get
questions
away
it.
with more than whatnot. And I know a lot of street artists, you know what I mean, that do that. You know what I mean? A lot of them just do wheat pasting because painting's a whole other thing. And I've even resorted to things like with other artists and myself, like wearing the yellow vest. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and then
that's
you
funny.
really look like you're supposed to be there, you know, kind of thing. And people actually think I'm buffing pieces and not putting something up. It's kind of a fun.
Got like a hard hat,
But yeah, you really kind of learn the tricks of the trade, and there are a lot of tricks of the trade when you do, you know, what I do. And but the very best is rolling with other artists. But you got to find those people that, you know, have the same sensibility as you. You know what I mean, and work like you. And you know, I've gone out with some artists, and all they want to do is talk. And I'm like, you're supposed to be watching for cops.
Yeah,
you know, we'll talk later. But then I found those people that you just do the work, and then go hang out, you know, go get coffee or something and shoot the shit and talk about, you know, every whatever, talk about the trade. And that's the best. And I do have a good group of people in a lot of different cities that I can now, you know, hang with and roll with, and that's pretty great.
Have you ever been arrested?
I've never been arrested. I have had cops roll up on me, actually a couple blocks away. It was about a year and a half after I had started. I'm only 3.5 years deep in this thing. So I kind of still say I'm still a baby because there are people that have been doing it for a long, long time, and that's amazing. But it was about a year and a half after I started, and I was very lucky for that year and a half. But, you know, I looked over my shoulder and just saw these cops slow rolling up the street, and it was like at 5:30 in the morning, and I was like, shit. So they started talking to me, and I was actually more nervous than I thought I would be because it was the first time. But like a minute or two into the conversation, one of the cops goes, hey, don't worry. We actually like what you're doing.
Really?
And that was awesome.
Really?
And that started the whole thing of, okay, they do get it. You know what I mean? They do get that it's positive messages. They do get that I'm not vandalizing or graffiti. Having said that, they still did run my name to see if I had any warrants or priors, and I didn't. So that was a big thing in my favor. But they also did say another cop, you know what I mean, a block away might have a different take on this whole thing. So be careful. And I totally respect that. You know what I mean? I do hope, you know, that I know the laws are in effect. Like I said, the laws are in effect because here in Los Angeles, a long time ago, they looked at spray painting as a gateway to gangs. So they wanted to put a big slap on the wrist. So they made spray painting, you know, illegal or
no matter
felony.
what it was.
No matter what it was. So I get it, but I hope that people see that, you know, I'm not a gangbanger. I'm not tagging. I'm not vandalizing. I'm trying to do something that's making a difference, or like we say, you know, so that's very altruistic, and yeah, so you never know, and I'm always very careful, or as careful as I can be, but yeah, it's always kind of crazy.
God, that's so fascinating to me. Can we back up a little bit and just can you talk a little bit about well, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about what cities, what countries that your stuff is up, and also you know, whether it's like Chicago. Have you had stuff in galleries, that sort of thing as well?
I do. Let me answer everything.
Sure.
So the list of cities is lengthy, but or it's getting there. And again, I'm very modest, but I love traveling. I love wanderlusting, so I take the art everywhere. And I'll start in the States and then go overseas. But I am up in Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, New Orleans, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York City, West Palm Beach, Florida. I think that's everything in the States. And then overseas, London, Paris, Edinburgh.
That's what I call it.
Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Is it Edinburgh?
People say Edinburgh. I think it's Edinburgh. Whatever.
Edinburgh. And then
I love that city,
Melbourne, Australia. I'm sorry, I'm losing the list. Oh, Krakow, Poland. I was just in Poland, which was awesome.
I heard that's a great city.
It is a great city. It's kind of amazing, and I think that's it for overseas. I might be forgetting a city or two, but yeah, I love to travel, so I do take the art wherever I go, and I love going overseas.
Do you keep it in English when you go over there?
Yeah, I do actually. There's occasionally, and there's some places that are on my list that if I do go, I will do pieces in other language or try to. You know what I mean? But the funny story I tell is the first time I went to Paris, I did a couple, even though they love English, or seemingly love English, they won't admit that, but I did do a couple pieces in French, and I had this couple that both of them grew up in France and lived their entire lives, so they translated the stuff for me, but still I put the pieces up and people were like, oh no, that's
sounds
not
weird.
how you say that, and everybody wants to critique it when it's in another language, especially Paris, because Paris you can say things 5 different ways, you know what I mean, and they're also kind of they just critique it, you know, more than they would. So I learned just do English, you know what I mean, and people will appreciate it. In those countries, like the countries that I listed and the countries that I've been, do speak, you know, a lot of English in addition to their language, so it works. If I did go somewhere, like if I did go to Japan or China or Italy, I probably would do pieces in those languages and try my hardest, my damnedest to get it right. Yeah, so I would do it, but predominantly everything's in English.
Yeah. Okay. And then
galleries. Yeah. That was an amazing thing. Like as you do this, and if people are liking you know, the work, 2 things happen. Like I do get a lot of requests for commissions, and I did early on. And that was crazy because originally we talked about, I'm a writer. I started doing this on a whim, and I wanted to get the words out there, and I was focusing on the words. And then really early on, after just a couple months, I started getting requests for commissions because people wanted those words in their lives. But that made me want to be a better artist. So I kind of took a little step back and learned more about the craft, like learning how to make better stencils and bigger stencils, and learning more about paint and spray paint especially. And it's crazy because I am a writer first and foremost, and I really, before I started this, I never considered myself an artist of the paint and brush variety. Now, after 3.5 years, it's a crazy notion to say I am an artist, and I do think that the art has kind of like rose to meet the words, you know what I mean, and people visually like, you know, what they're seeing in addition to, you know, verbally, you know, liking what they're reading. So that is amazing for me, and I love that. I think it was a hidden talent that I had, you know what I mean, because, you know, I mean, there's obviously artists that are just amazing, you know, that can freehand walls and do incredible murals, and I think they're rock stars. But then I also know what I do, you know what I mean, I'm good at, you know what I mean. I know how to make stencils. I know how to make stencils to be able to do a 25-foot wall now, and I'm going to eventually probably do something bigger. So there's a beauty in that if you want to express yourself, and this is also a lesson for everybody, it's like if you want to express yourself, there's always a way. You find a way. Yeah. I could never freehand a wall, you know what I mean, and do a mural like muralists. But I'm a street artist, and street artists are very resourceful, and we find a way to do pieces very, very large, whether we're doing them on the down low or whether we're commissioned to do them. And yeah, so that led to galleries also. When you're doing commissions, and, you know, I work with canvas and reclaimed materials, reclaimed wood, metal, glass, and those pieces also, you know, translate into gallery shows. I have been asked to be part of, you know, group shows, and I've done some shows with other artists. I've yet to do a solo show. It's on my list, and I'm going to do something, and when I do it, it's going to be pretty fucking grand. I am an ambitious person, and I like to surprise people. So all I can say is whenever I do a show, not just a solo show, but whenever I do a show, I like to surprise people. I want people to walk in and, you know, people know what I do. You know what I mean? It's just like, you know, and I'll always do what I do, but, you know, just having that notion of surprising people is something I strive for. Uh-huh. So it sounds very vague, but it's not. All I know is when I do a solo show, it's going to be something a lot of fun, and it's going to kind of surprise people, and I have some plans for it. I'm just like figuring out, the place and time that's
super
right
cool,
for
though.
it. Yeah.
So, but okay. And speaking of this, and this is something that I'm super curious about, and I'm sure other people are too, and this is related to what you did in Chicago and also for the city of LA. I'm fascinated how that came about, by the way. So maybe this will kind of lead into that. But how did you begin to monetize what you do? This is an important thing, and this is something that I think it is. But it's something that also a lot of creative people get a little weird about sometimes. But the fact is, I mean, you can do things. You can do art. You can do things on the side, and that's fine. But you need to pay your rent. You need to have a life, and I don't. Not only do I not see a problem with it, I think you should. And people wonder how these street artists, or any artist, but particularly a street artist, how they start out running around at night and doing these things, and it turns into someone like eventually like Banksy, for example, like we talked about, who's huge. How does that happen? What is the progression? How does that start? And how does how would somebody do that?
It's an amazing thing, and I don't think there's any formula to make it happen. I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, in that you just got to find something that you're passionate about and do it. You know what I mean? And I started this as a hobby. You know what I mean? And I needed an active hobby, so I was having a lot of fun at it. So I just kept doing it and doing it a lot. You know what I mean? And the beginning, like as far as on social media, the beginning of seeing that it was resonating with people, even though when it was a small following, I just kind of saw that it was constantly growing, or there was a domino effect or a snowball effect. And again, that fueled the creative fire. So I guess what I'm getting at is there is no formula, but if you're doing something you're passionate about and people like it, it can, translate into something that is successful to a level of supporting yourself. I mean, that's the goal. There is some tried and true. I mean, if you're trying to be a musician, there is a path, to doing it, to making the music, to doing live shows, to recording, to trying to sell records or get signed. Street art, I guess there's kind of a similar thing. I mean, you have to get the messages out there. You have to hope that they're resonating and people notice, and it turns into things like requests for commissions, or it turns into things like gallery shows. But all I can say is it's a formula that I heard. I think it was a filmmaker that said it about anything, chasing your dream, and it's talent plus perseverance equals luck. And that's all you can do. You know what I mean? You can be the most talented person. You can be the most persevering person and just keep doing it, but it also needs to translate into luck. You know what I mean? And I've been very lucky. You know what I mean? Even though everything we talked about, you know what I mean? Just the words resonating with people. It's been key things that have happened, or just things that continue to grow into something that is supporting me, and that's amazing. But I can't turn to anybody and sit there and say this is how you do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Other than saying just be passionate about it and believe in it. You know what I mean? And don't do it because you think it's going to be popular, or you think you're going to make money at it, but just just come at it from a different angle, and you might be surprised at the results. Because if it's truly making you happy, there's a good chance it's going to make someone else happy, and hopefully that continues to replicate and snowball effect and just work in your favor.
Right. Well, it's something of value.
Yeah, and there's another thing to that. Like I said in the beginning, like I never expected to make a dime, and as far as monetizing it, like I do have T-shirts and prints out there, and they do sell. But if you ever see that, like there's always a charitable overlay for me, because again, I never expected it, and it was a very altruistic thing that I'm trying to do. So I always turn around. I pay it forward a lot too. I'll always donate pieces to a good cause, and I'll just always do do things, and it's because I just feel so fucking lucky. You know what I mean? That
it's gratitude,
this is happening. Right? Yeah, and I think that's part of it. It goes back to one of my most popular words that really encapsulate what wordsmith is about, and that's aspire to inspire others, and the universe will take note. And there's something to that, you know what I mean? I think that the fact that I was putting positive messages out there and chose to try to change people's lives in that manner, the universe took note of that, and karma has been really good, and I hope it continues to be good. And there's something to that too. We talked about it earlier, but we didn't kind of talk about it. Is I am very positive, and I am the positive person in a world of street art that I don't want to say is negative, but like you brought up the thing with Banksy, and it's very critical, and I think that's awesome. I think that there's street artists that are political, and they do it so well, and it is needed to kind of like show people just the craziness that's going on in the world, and the awfulness that's going on in the world. I chose to come at it from a different angle. I am very much aware, of the politics, and I'm very much aware of the terrible things that are happening in the world on a daily basis. But as far as my art, I actually choose to try to make people not forget that, but just, to turn a corner and smile or laugh or be affected in a positive way. It's not that I'm ignoring those issues, but I just know what I wanted to do and what wordsmith is, and it is not political. It's actually the opposite. It's to maybe like have people forget their troubles. And again, I keep saying this, maybe that's for a moment, maybe that's for a minute, maybe that's for an hour, maybe that turns into a week and a month. But I want to be that guy, and that's what I'm striving for. And that goes back to the other thing that I said. Now my goal is just to, get up and in as many different places and as big and as long as I can, because I do know that the words are affecting people, and they're affecting people in a positive manner.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm assuming, you want to help people get past their troubles and not think about their troubles. Just from what little I know about you and what I've seen, and just from this last, 45 minutes or so talking to you, and, just being a person on the planet Earth, I'm assuming that you have had some troubles and doubts as an artist, maybe, and, as a person, and you've gotten through it. Maybe you mentioned something earlier about, you're a writer, and maybe, I don't know if you went through something and you decided you had to do this, you had to do something else, you had to get it out there somehow in another way. Maybe that might have been a form of overcoming something, or overcoming a doubt, for example. Have you had some dark periods as an artist, or doubtful periods? And I'm like I said, I'm assuming you have.
Absolutely. I'd be lying. Obviously, as I'm a human, and I'd be lying if I said I haven't had ups and downs, you know what I mean, and gone through very, troubled times. Without getting too personal, sure. I'll talk about something that's very universal. When I started wordsmithing, there was a woman in my life, and she was very much a muse, and a lot of, the words that you saw were spawned from expressing myself to her, you know what I mean, and again, trying to woo her and just trying to make her smile and just express how I felt about her, and that was phenomenal. And then it's a year and a half now or more. She completely, for reasons that I still kind of don't understand or struggle with, completely pulled away from me, and it was devastating. It was shattering, and everybody goes through that. You know what I mean?
Nothing worse, really.
Love is a crazy thing, and what I'm getting at is during that time, the words, the romantic words, changed. Like, it really went through this, and I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. It went through this, not sunny thing, but just kind of talking, and the amazing, and talking about the, what happened, and just, that side of love. But the amazing thing is that's as universal as the positive.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? People love, expressing the positive, but then, half the songs that are popular on the radio are about, shattered love, or just unrequited love. You know what I mean? So it was amazing to me that I was like, and I still expressed myself. I still stayed true to who I was. This was on my mind, and I still put that stuff out there, but it was as well received, if not received like stronger, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
then. And it was an amazing thing to see, you know what I mean? So yeah, I have gone through it, and it is expressed in the work. As far as the motivational and aspirational, it's really tough for me, you know what I mean, to get dark with that, you know what I mean? Even though
Sure.
I've had those times, I don't want to be the guy, you know, that's saying, you know, negative things, but it was the great example is the ups and downs of the romance. The audience went with it and even kind of embraced it more, because, and it's not even to say that like it was all these people going through what I was going through. It's just you, even if you're not head over heels in love, you know, if you read something like "The only lie I ever told you is that I liked you when I already knew I loved you," you've been there at a period in time. Just like the downside to the love, the tough portions of the love. And I'm trying to think of one, but it's actually a funny one, even though there was truth to it. Is that how did it go? It goes if you love someone, set them free, and then check to see if they liked your posts, you know, every day, kind of thing. It was something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I put that out there, and it was so damn popular. But even if you're not, all I'm saying is, even if you're not there presently, you've been there at some period of time. You might be head over heels in love, but you laugh at that because you were there,
It's
you know,
reassuring.
6 months or 2 years ago or 10 years ago. So there is some universality to it, and that's great. But yeah, so yeah, I definitely I go through my ups and downs, but I try to remain positive.
And you got through it through your work.
Absolutely.
Through your work itself.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to get off subject just briefly here, but I'm a huge beer fan. I've actually made it once. I'd like to do it again. Brewed my own stuff. I bring this up because I just saw that on your shelf there. It says Wordsmith Lager. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Do you make your own beer?
I do not. I was in. I had last time I was in London, which is just a couple months ago. I had an awesome opportunity to put up a piece at a pub there, and. It was an awesome opportunity. I actually did part of it in a live event. So they publicized it that I was going to be finishing this piece, and part of the event, the pub makes their own beer. It's called the Porterhouse in Covent Garden. Mm-hmm. They make their own beer, so they took some of the lagers that they make, and we designed a label for it.
That's
and it
so
was
cool.
It was, I think, 75 bottles available at the event. So I took a couple and brought them back, and yeah, it was awesome because I'm a huge beer fan, and seeing Wordsmith cool. on a label was just was pretty damn cool.
That is cool.
Yeah.
So we're going to start wrapping it up here. We're getting close to an hour, and but I just wanted to ask one more thing about. Do you have sort of a daily discipline with your work, whether it's a daily writing discipline or any other type of whatever it may be, discipline?
I do. I write every day, and for me, that's the secret. I think whatever you do, do it every day to some degree. And I said earlier, like, I'm an early riser, so you have to find the niche that works for you. And I discovered years ago that, you know, I get up early and I love the routine of the morning. I love the quiet. I love coffee, and I'm very productive during that quiet time. I do, you know, my best writing then. You know, I think because it's a lot. It has less distractions, and I do love, you know, listening to music while having coffee and writing. So it just works for me. It worked for me for years. There's some writers that write at night, and I applaud that. You know what I mean? That just, again, you find your niche. That frustrated me because no matter what, I was going to hit a wall. And if I was writing really good but was getting tired, I got frustrated. I'm like, maybe I'll wake up early. And it just worked for me because then I can write for an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. And that's another thing, like when I'm really doing it, really hitting grinding it out, I've learned like maybe at 10 or 11 o'clock just to take a break. And I go like hiking in Runyon Canyon. It's a canyon, you know, right here in Hollywood, but it's close to my home. And that just recharges my batteries. Like I can't wait to get back to the computer, and I might write for 2, 3, 6, 5 hours more. And that just works for me. So there is that that secret that you got to find. These days, where it's more wordsmith and it's not finding the time to do that long form writing, I'm still writing every day and creating every day, and a lot of it is the art. That's why, like, you're here in my living room, but it's actually my studio. Like I work out of my apartment, and I have a patio that I use as my studio, and I love that because I can be working on something, in my office, and 20 steps away is my patio, and I can paint something and just kind of shift gears like that and make it work. So that's great. I've not only found the time that I'm efficient, but I found a way to kind of like work in these different mediums, you know what I mean? And just kind of like bounce back and forth between it. So I don't have a set thing every day. I mean, all my days are different, but there are similarities. Like if I'm doing the art, I usually do get up early and put up some pieces, and then do some work on the computer, and then maybe do some commissions or whatnot. So it's definitely different every day, even though I am creating every day, whether it's words or paint and words or whatnot. And I think that's the secret. Like there are some times, like I just came back from a trip in Chicago, and I needed to decompress. I needed a couple days off. And I think that's also healthy. Even though I was doing a lot of business and a lot of answering emails and setting up, next projects, there's even a little bit of writing in that, you know what I mean? Because you're kind of creatively thinking and or communicating with people. So I don't know. The only thing I'll say is just, whatever you do it every day to some degree. And it turns into a body of work that hopefully you're proud of.
Yeah. Do you have anything is there anything that maybe I didn't bring up that you thought I would, or maybe you wished I would, or anything you want to add or talk about?
Not really. You've been pretty efficient. Now I'm just trying to think of other things people, have asked about, but I don't know. It was a pretty fluid conversation. I can't think of anything that was blatantly, that missed.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I love this, man, and wordsmith. I'm not going to say your real name.
It's cool.
But I will. I'll post everything. It's on Triumph and Disaster blog. I'll post a bunch of your stuff up there. And thank you, man. Thanks. It's been a really cool talk. Even if it's weird, I mean, we had these mics kind of in our face the whole time, but it was just a cool conversation, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very easy to talk to, but it's also a subject that I love, talking about. And that's another thing. If anybody has any questions for me that's listening, I mean, I'm on social media. If you go to my Instagram,
please go ahead and be clear what it is.
It's wordsmith on Instagram, no vowels, WRDSMTH. But also there in my bio is my email and just ways to contact me. So if you have any questions to any degree, you know what I mean. Whether it's I love your stuff, I want a commission, or I'm thinking about doing this, as crazy as it sounds, do you have any advice? I'll always listen. That's another thing. Like I get messages from people all the time, but again, I said it before, that fuels the creative fire, and I love talking to anybody that sees my work and or wants to talk, and I never want that to go away. You know what I mean? Like I do know some artists that are like, I'm so sick of talking to people, or it's just like too much, and I never want that. If that happens to me, I did something wrong, because if you're looking at wordsmith's work, and if I'm saying aspire to inspire others and the universe will take note, I have to back that up with I really do love talking to people, and I'll answer as many messages as I can on a daily basis. And again, I never want that to go away. It's part of the thrill, you know what I mean? And it's part of the creative fire. And in conversations with people, it could be a conversation like we had now, or an email I'm answering, I get ideas, you know what I mean, on how to express myself. So it's all, part of the process, and that's it just works for me.
Well, you're a good guy, man, and you're doing really, really good work, and you deserve the success you're having, and I wish you even more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been great
man.
to be here.
Thanks. And that was Wordsmith, you guys. I hope you liked that. I hope you liked that talk as much as I did. And if you're not familiar with his work, I'll put everything up on Triumph and Disaster blog. Maybe about a half a dozen examples of his work. Put some links up, and so follow him. He's super cool. Maybe you've seen his stuff in your city. I don't know. But more cool guys coming up. And like I said at the beginning, I'm going to try to get some guys that aren't just in movies and that sort of thing. I have some really cool guests lined up, really, really cool ones that I'm excited about. So make sure to subscribe and keep in touch. And triumphanddisaster@gmail.com. If you have anything you want to tell me, any suggestions, whatever the case may be, I'd love to hear from you guys. I promise I always return every email. I always do that. And like I say all the time, it really does help if you guys could leave any kind of a quick rating and review on iTunes. It really does help Apple to promote the show. And we'll see you next week. Triumph and Disaster. Thanks.